Welcome. This is Leading with Spirit, the show that gives you an in-depth look at topics like what it takes to navigate your spiritual journey, how to heal yourself and grow your spiritual gifts, and balanced practices to expand your business and your spiritual leadership. I'm your host, Spirit Bird, shamanic teacher, healer, and author, here to guide you on your journey to becoming your most potent spiritual leader. As you grow your spiritual business and continue to grow your own healing skills, you're inevitably going to run across ideas that other people have about what the best way is, what you should and shouldn't do, the methods for success. And of course, you're going to run across naysayers and haters in general. Today, I want to talk about how to stay true to yourself while you're growing your spiritual business. I started tracking this really when I started my business, because before I even brought it forward, when I was just playing around with what I wanted to share, I had to go through the first stage of this journey of how to stay true to myself. So today I'm going to share how I stayed true to myself through each of the stages of creating my business, then growing it to the next level, then eventually calling in ideal clients and moving into a new industry, and also coming to terms with what I actually thought and what I actually think and feel, and sharing that, knowing that it might actually rattle some people and, rile people up a little bit. So when I started my business, I had this huge range of things that I wanted to share and teach. And if you're listening, you probably are this way too. There's a good chance that you're very creative, that you're a visionary, that you have tons of things that you know and you want to share with people. And you've probably gone through a lot of your own personal healing already and know how valuable this journey actually is. So for me, I was excited and wanted to teach about things, from a huge range, everything from, star seeds and aliens to alternatives to money and the economy, conscious business, obviously shamanism, how to work with clients, manifesting, dream work, plant medicine. There was a huge range. When I started, though, I limited myself to what I thought people would buy. And this was actually my first mistake. Now, granted, it did get me out there. It did actually have me start to share things with other people. So I will definitely give it credit for that. So when I started, I actually started as a meditation coach. And I love meditation as a tool. I think it's really valuable. I was passionate about it and I was good at it and at teaching it, but it wasn't what actually lit me up. The reason that I offered it first is because, again, I thought it was something that people understood. I didn't think that they would understand the depths and the intricacies of what I actually wanted to teach, or that if they could understand it, nobody wouldn't be able to understand, my business. Maybe they would understand the actual teachings, but they wouldn't be able to understand it, as a shopper. So I offered meditation and it did okay. I had some clients, I had some business. Again, it was my launching pad. But I realized as I sat with it, I realized it was less exciting and motivating for me to promote and to share because, again, while it's a really valuable tool, it's not even the number one tool that I use. So for me to spend all of this time and energy promoting it and trying to share it with others, knowing that it's actually not the thing that even excites me, wasn't really a great service. And I see this with a lot of new business owners and people that are just trying different things. One of the first things that we do is we try to create something that we think will sell, or we'll try to sell the most of something versus what we actually really, really want to do. And if you're not clear about that, then what ends up happening is you might do what I did, which is I'm going to try this. 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 And then you end up trying to fill this void in your business of either not having enough clients or not having the right clients by just filling it with everything that you can think of and trying a gazillion things. And then it ends up being scattered. It ends up being confusing to the client. and then you end up getting scattered in your own energy too. So I kept doing what I thought people wanted instead of what I actually wanted. And when I finally launched what I really wanted, which was shaman school, it took off. It was aligned and it took off pretty quickly. Now I put in work, but in general, it wasn't, I was excited about it the whole time. And even though I was learning new things about how to run a business and how to share my message, it was exciting to me most of the time. Except for maybe a few times where I got into like tech nightmare, but it's kind of like, in the grand scheme of things, that was probably like a couple of days, maybe a couple of weeks total over the course of like 6 months that any of my time went to something like that. So in general, it was really not that hard. And you can get support with tech. So don't let things like that scare you off or let that become a reason not to do what you're here to do. Again, because you can either get support or in the grand scheme of things, me having to buckle down and learn the tech for 2 weeks was well worth me being able to launch a successful business doing what I really love and then like helping people in the way that I'm helping people. I still get, so much joy and kind of surprised that during and by the end of shaman school, hearing all of the wins that people have, hearing and witnessing their transformation, their experience. And it's like, oh my God, that was totally worth messing around with tech for 2 weeks. But that's not what I'm here to share with you today. So what was happening is, again, I wasn't really excited about the meditation coaching. So it wasn't super fun for me to share. And I wasn't getting great results. Again, I was getting something, but not great results because it just wasn't really what I'm here to do in the end. And what I really wanted to do was teach this whole thing. I wanted to teach all of this stuff. I wanted to teach all of the details and the fun parts about growing your spiritual gifts and the crazy things that happen when we work with the spirit realm, and the magical things that happen in our life when we follow our intuition and our flow and we trust ourselves. And I really wanted to teach the whole picture of shamanism, not just this like little introductory thing that you get in most courses. And I also had been working with clients for a while at that point, and I found that most trainings that I did talked about like how to do the healing work, but they really didn't share like what it's actually like to be in there and work with people and the stuff that you're going to run into when you work with clients and the blocks that clients are going to hit and like the different types of personalities and the shamanic archetypes, which nobody ever talks about. And so I had to give myself permission to do it. So this was my second block, right? This was my second place where I had to come back to myself and learn how to stay true to myself. And that was because I was afraid. I thought that I wasn't allowed to teach shamanism, really. I mean, with the training that I had grown up with, I was taught that you definitely don't talk about this in public, that you don't tell people that you're a healer, that you definitely don't teach shamanism as a white person, and that you're definitely not allowed to make money doing spiritual work. So I had all those blocks around it. But in the end, it was like, no, actually, I came here to do this. I'm quite brilliant with this work. And I'm really good at helping people find their own unique medicine and bring it into their life, launch it into the 3D pretty quickly. It took me like 10 plus years, right? But I've been able to figure out a way to help other people do that really fast. So for me, it was like I had to go through this kind of gauntlet of everybody else's opinion to find my own. And so again, with each layer of my business, I would go through a new layer of that, of like starting to see and hear from like what everybody else thought until I had to find and discern what I actually believe and understand. This is how to stay true to yourself. Understand that no matter what you do or how you do it, somebody is going to be in disagreement with you. Somebody's going to believe you're wrong, you're bad, you're not doing it the right way, whatever. And so actually, I know that's like the first few times that I ran into it, it was like, super scary. And as I went further along in the business, you will get more comfortable with it. I mean, you still, at least I still never like it. I still want people to be happy and want people to like me. And I deeply care about other people. But in the end, it's like, well, I'm aware of what my actual reality is. I'm aware of what my life is. And one, there's a really good chance that people, the naysayers that might come in and disagree with you, probably have no idea what they're talking about, first of all. They probably don't know you, and they don't have the whole picture. So their comments really don't have any validity. It's just like, I mean, it's like, it would be like seeing, a window store and having there be something in the window that you don't like, and somebody on the street walks by and just like yells into the store. Like, that's pretty much what it's like when somebody comments on social media that you don't actually have a relationship with. And so with that in mind, it makes it seem like a little bit sillier. It's like, I know it can feel really dramatic when it happens. But again, what I have found is that those naysayers, what they have held for me is they've given me the ability to find myself in what I actually believe, because I have two choices. I can either jump in with them and their story about how they see things, or I can find what's true to me and then ground even deeper into that. So I ran into that when I started advertising too. I used Facebook ads fairly early on in my business, and same thing. I mean, it's just out there to the internet, and you've got all kinds of people on the internet that maybe know nothing about what you do or why you do it, and probably have their own distortions around it. So, what I would begin to see is like when I would trigger somebody, like initially it was about the money thing. It was like people would be like, oh, well, you're not legit. You're just doing this to make money. And it's like, well, no, actually, I'm not. I'm doing this because I want to help other people. And I love sharing this work. And I think the world is a better place when more people know how to do this work. I do include money in it because for me to be able to do this and reach a lot of people, I need to make money. And of course, what you learn when you either are working with a healer or offering work yourself is that it's not 100% true, but most of the time, if there isn't an actual monetary exchange, then the clients aren't actually invested in their results. And you've probably experienced that too, when you sign up for something that's free and you don't go to it. You don't go to it because you didn't care, because you weren't out anything. And so for there to be real transformation, most of the time there needs to be that exchange of money. So I also know that from the other side. And if you haven't actually worked with somebody and held somebody through a really deep transformational process, you're probably not going to understand that. And I just have to be okay with the fact that sometimes people aren't going to understand that. So I would get hit with those initial reactions, but the fact of the matter is I knew it was true because I was the one in my business actually working with the clients. So what it was doing was actually making me stronger, because I had to check in with myself on what I actually believed. And the same thing happened also, like I went through that layer with the money piece, and then I went through a whole nother layer with, appropriation and racism, and, received lots of nasty comments from people about me being allowed to do what I'm doing. And same thing, in the end, they actually don't know my experience. They don't know my training. They don't know how I offer my work and the level of integrity that I have with it. And it's not everybody's job to know all of these things about me. So there's a way that initially it was like, somebody said something mean to me. And then I had to be like, you know what? No, I'm not in agreement with this. And I'm not buying into this story that you're putting on me. So then one of the next major levels that I had to go through was really around marketing and business and following what the experts say as far as how to grow your business. So it's a whole nother thing here. So initially, and this is where it's important to find a balance between your sabotage patterns and your avoidance patterns. So when I started my business, I avoided a lot of the typical marketing practices. I didn't know them, first of all, but I also avoided them because I just thought any type of marketing or advertising was automatically bad and automatically made me not legit. Again, one of those crazy stories that we sort of latch onto as spiritual people that in the end don't make any sense. They don't make any sense. But I felt uncomfortable with it because I didn't know how to use it in a way that felt authentic. And also because it is true, a lot of marketing and advertising is sleazy or is not in integrity. But that doesn't mean just because it's marketing or advertising that it automatically is sleazy or not in integrity. So when you avoid it in the first place, Like the avoidance pattern is this belief that because you're spiritual, you don't have to do it or you don't have to learn it. And that is spiritual bypassing. We usually only hear the term spiritual bypassing when we're talking about like trying to be in the light and the happiness. But you can spiritually bypass a lot of things. You can spiritually bypass a lot of 3D things. So avoiding learning things like financials, avoiding learning things like marketing, avoiding learning things like how to structure your business, that's also part of spiritual bypassing. So I did need to learn some of those basic things so that I could find my own authentic voice in it. If I had skipped over it, I wouldn't have been able to pick out what works for me and what doesn't, and what I like and what I don't like. So learning those like kind of more traditional marketing pieces was really important for my journey so that I could actually break the rules and do it the way that I wanted to do. But it wouldn't have been authentic. I wouldn't have been breaking any rules. It wouldn't have been revolutionary if I didn't learn the rules in the first place. So it's a really important part of the process, even if it feels uncomfortable. But then you could go to the other extreme. And I experienced this in my journey as well, where it's like, okay, my business is doing great. It's taken off. I'm helping people, like I'm watching people go through shaman school and then launch their own business or grow their own business or like charge twice as much. Heal things in their family, like things popping, everything's looking great. And then I was like, well, I guess the next stage is to reach more people. And I had ran into a glitch in my tech. And long story short, I actually like what happened was like 6 different things changed in my business all at the same time. So long story short, I got a little desperate and I was like, okay, well, my offer is proven. Let me go ahead and hire somebody that can help me. And she was great. She was great at what she did. The issue was, however, that it wasn't actually in alignment with how I wanted to sell my program. It wasn't even in alignment with what my program actually was. And what I did is I handed over my own knowing and my own authority to what I believed was somebody else that knew better. And I basically tried to be in agreement with the way that they thought businesses sell instead of what I knew was true and what I must stand for. And what happened is all of the rules that generally work just didn't work for me because it wasn't the ultimate, really the bottom line was that it wasn't in alignment with what my program actually even was. So it was confusing to the buyer. And it did kind of lean into, I wouldn't say it wasn't sleazy, it wasn't untrue. It's just like, it just was sideways. It wasn't direct. It wasn't like, this is what this is, and this is what you can get. And here's the information you need to know. I trust that you can make your own decision about it. So I had to learn that, and I learned it the hard way, but also now I freaking know how I like to do my marketing. And now I really know what I'm a stand for in my business. And now I really know how to do it in a way that feels good and feels in alignment for me. And it's working way better. So, it's not really, if you've experienced this at all, if you've invested in somebody that had a big promise for you and you didn't get there, some of it has to do with us, like sometimes we're not in an alignment, or we're not doing our work, or, we're not actually listening to what they say. I've ran into that as a coach also, where I tell people exactly what they need to do and they don't listen and it doesn't work. And then they feel like they've been gypped, but it's actually like, yeah, but you didn't listen to me is the problem. And I've also been on the other side of it where it was like, I signed up for something for the wrong reasons. I signed up for it because I thought you were going to save me from a thing. And that's not how any of this works. And so it was a great lesson. It was an expensive lesson, but it was a great lesson. And actually now my business is way better because of it. Right. And so same thing there. It was like I actually had to kind of go through what wasn't working so I could land even further in my truth. It's like I had to leave myself and get far away from myself so I could know exactly where I am and land even deeper in myself. And then that kind of leads to, where I've been for the better part of this year, where then once I got more in alignment with how I wanted to promote and market my business, what I was a stand for in my business, what I care about, what is important to me in shamanic training, then I started to realize I actually have a lot of really strong opinions about what works and what doesn't work in this industry. And and some people are not going to like it. There's some people that are not going to like it. It's going to piss them off. So I also then had to go through this other stage of like, whoa, I actually, for me to stay true to myself, for me to run around and talk about the importance of authenticity in marketing in your business and authenticity as a healer, and then be hiding this huge set of beliefs that I have in exchange for what looks pretty, is not really how I want to do my business. And that's not really great leadership either. So I realized that it was time for me to share what I disagreed with in the industry, not necessarily to call people out or to put people down, but really just to state my beliefs. Like, hey, this isn't working. Hey, the way we've done shamanic training, where where the person who is the teacher kind of holds you hostage and continues to like raise the bar so you can never get it, and continues to reinforce this thing that suggests that you're never actually going to be ready or you're never actually going to be enough. I'm a no to that. This like old idea in shamanic training that it has to be hard or suffering or it's not real or legit. I am a no to that. Yes, you're going to be going through fear. You're going to be facing things. There's going to be moments that are challenging for sure, but you don't need to be like dragged through the mud for this to actually be legit and real. And again, like this is the thing, it's like from my experience, that's not how it has to be. And when I run into what I would call a naysayer who believes that that's what it's supposed to be like, it's like, fine, I'm not saying that your experience isn't legit because it's different than mine. I'm saying that mine is still legit, even though it might be different than yours. And that we don't have to do it this old way. And there's lots of different ways to bring teachings through. And we get to choose the way that we want to bring those teachings through. So, yeah, so that was challenging. And I still run through those moments. And then I ran through it when I started talking more openly about psychedelics and plant medicine. And it's like, I've been doing this work for a long time. And I went through that whole layer. It was like I went through that this whole pathway that I'm taking you through right now that I went through with bringing my shamanic business forward. I've gone through all of those steps also with sharing more openly about the plant medicine and psychedelic work. Same sabotage patterns too, same thing. I thought that you weren't supposed to talk about it openly. I felt that if I use the words, then I was sort of like using that to like lure people in, and instead of it actually being about the healing, which is the whole point of this work. It's like, oh, come to plant medicine. I'll try to make us this shiny thing. And then you'll come because it's actually, because you'll be attracted to this plant medicine thing. And I thought that was sort of like cheating. But actually it's like, no, actually I'm in deep integrity with this work. I'm still learning like everybody with everything, but I'm in deep integrity with this work. And what I find is a lot of practitioners that are actually meant to do this work spend a lot longer in the doubt and trying to be in integrity than they actually should. So what happens is you have people that have this like sense of confidence that actually probably shouldn't be offering what they're offering. And because they don't have the integrity block, they're going straight forward and they're doing big things. And so sometimes we feel like we need to do more work to get to that point. But actually, it's like, no, the fact that you have doubt means that you're legit. It means that you're constantly questioning. And that's a really good place to be. That's a really healthy place to be as a practitioner, even though it's uncomfortable a lot of times and maybe might feel like, who are you to be doing this? So finding that balance there is important. So I went through all of those phases of like how to stay true to myself. And I'm still there. There's still moments where I'm like, oh, I'm not like a expert in this area. But then I look at other people that are sharing their work, sharing their experience like they're experts, and they maybe have done it for 2 years instead of 2 decades. And again, that's fine. It's not to put them down. It's just really for you to see like how we can sabotage ourselves and not bring our work forward. And so this again is where you need to find where that truth is for yourself. And so for me, what I find is helpful is again, letting those moments where you stray from yourself not be bad or shameful, just letting them be an experience that you needed to go through so that you could find yourself even stronger and more, centered and more grounded in yourself and your beliefs and who you are and what you stand for. I find that it's helpful to do things a little bit at a time. So instead of going for the biggest, most triggering thing that you could share, just try little bits at a time. And then lastly, and probably most importantly, how to stay true to yourself while you're growing your spiritual business and while you're growing your healing capabilities and your spiritual gifts and bringing them forward and sharing them with others. It's really important to remember that we're all just trying to figure this out. And whether you're expressing yourself through social media or, out in person in your community or doing public speaking, sometimes we might look at other people that seem to be doing it well and think that, one, they have it all together, or two, that it needs to be perfect like them. And you've got to know that they also had to go through a period where they tried things on, where maybe when they first started selling, it was really ridiculous or sleazy, or maybe when they first started sharing their work, it was a little bit robotic or a little bit like copycatter. Or maybe when they, first started, they did say something that was offensive. But we have to remember that, again, we're all just figuring this out. And if you actually can look at growing your spiritual business and growing and sharing your spiritual gifts as a practice, as practicing, then you can give yourself a lot more room to actually try things on and see what works and what doesn't, so that you can find your voice and so that you can find your truth. It's not something that you just know 100% and then you can go. It's something that you learn constantly as you go. I hope that's helpful for you. I hope that you can apply some of this to where you might be looking to grow your business. Thanks for joining me today. Have you been hearing the call to expand your spiritual gifts and step into your next level of conscious leadership? If you're a coach, healer, or a spiritual leader, you can learn more about Shaman School and growing your spiritual business on our website, holtonhealingarts.com, or send me a DM at Holton Healing Arts. Welcome to today's Member Query episode, where we explore questions about spiritual paths, intuitive gifts, growing a spiritual business, and shamanism. Do you have a question for us? Send us a DM at Holton Healing Arts. This is another question from a Leading with Spirit Facebook group member, and the question is, what's the difference between Reiki and shamanic healing? And great question. They're quite different, although there is often an overlap. So this is going to be a really reduced explanation, but in general, Reiki is a process of placing your hands on or slightly above somebody's body, and basically you're sending them universal energy. Again, that's a very simplified version, but the idea is that you're sending them like this universal sort of love energy that will activate that person's own healing response. Oftentimes Reiki practitioners in the process might intuit, they might get information in the same way that a lot of times massage therapists or any other body worker might get some information intuitively about what is happening in that person's body or system. Shamanic healing, on the other hand, again, this is very, very simplified, but with shamanism, like what the practice is that you're interacting with the essence or the spirit that is in all things. And so as a shamanic healer, what you would be doing is interacting with the spirit realm, interacting with the spirits, actually being a channel that connects the unseen realms and the spirit realms into this 3D world. So in that way, you're accessing sort of like this like higher power beyond human. And then as a practitioner, your job, instead of sort of like doing a thing and like just like letting it happen, your job instead is to be a guide for that person, to help them see how where they are interacts with all of life, so that they can then make a conscious choice about what they want to keep, what they want to leave behind, what they want to process, what they want to call in, and where they want to move forward in their life. So in that way, shamanic healing is like a lot more interactive. Not that one's better or worse than the other, but where Reiki tends to be like, in my experience, more of like, come lay on a table and I'll do a thing for you. Shamanic healing is like really interactive, and should, like, as a client, you should be a very big part of the experience, moving away from this idea that like the healer is somebody that just does a thing to you, and you actually get to be involved in your own healing process. I hope you enjoyed this episode of Leading with Spirit. If you did, please share the link for this episode with your biggest takeaway, tagging me at Holton Healing Arts. It would also support me if you subscribed and left a rating and review of the show so we can support more people living their highest purpose. Until next time, journey on.